DoD is rolling out a new program called the Flexible Spending Account for Healthcare that will allow service members to contribute directly from their paycheck into an account that they can later use to fund medical expenses like copays and other out-of-pocket medical expenses. So we're going to be talking about that today and seeing who it's really right for, talking about the specifics of the program, and all the things you need to consider when you're thinking about whether you should participate in that or not.
Welcome to Operation Retirement Readiness, where Amy and Mike, two certified financial planners, talk about how military members can prepare for transition and how veterans can prepare for ultimate retirement. This podcast represents the views of the hosts and any guest. It is for informational purposes only and should not be considered tax, financial, or legal advice. All information is regarded to be from reliable sources. The hosts are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. This podcast is not intended to replace professional advice.
So, Amy, today we're going to be talking about the flexible spending account that DoD is going to release in the spring of 2025. I think the target date is the March timeframe. And we just want to give service members an overview of what that is and who that may be appropriate for and some of the things you need to consider before you decide to participate or not participate in the program. So, Amy, what is a flexible spending account?
Yeah. So first, I'll say I'm excited about this because we don't have a ton of out-of-pocket costs as service members usually. Sometimes as retirees, but I'm excited about it because it does come up and it is a tax advantage. So the medical flexible spending account is, as Mike mentioned in the introduction, it's a way to set aside money pre-tax, so you don't pay tax on the money when it comes out, and you don't pay tax on it when it comes out of your paycheck. You don't pay tax on it either when you use it, as long as you're using it for qualified medical expenses. So that's the biggest thing. So it's got a tax benefit for it as long as you're using it for those qualified medical expenses. So Mike, how about if you go through the eligible expenses?
Sure. So these are governed by the IRS. FSAs have been around for a long time. It's really that DoD is just finally allowing this for the military members. But so it's things like your medical expenses, your copays, deductibles, anything like that. It can be dental expenses, so exams, cleanings, cavities, all of those things, even braces. It can be your vision expenses, glasses, contacts, the laser eye surgery. It can also be things like just wellness therapy, physical therapy, chiropractor, acupuncture. And then the one thing you can also use it for is prescriptions and over-the-counter medications. So those are things like, maybe you need Band-Aids or a blood pressure monitor. So anything that's really related to healthcare, you'll want to make sure. But those type of things are what you can generally use an FSA on.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, for so long, service members, in the event that you did have out-of-pocket expenses, and we did, you always had a few nominal expenses, whether you're picking up, baby Tylenol out of pocket or something. So it's nice to have the tax advantage of the FSA now. But there's a little bit of confusion between a flexible savings account and a health savings account. And so it's important to delineate those two. So the flexible savings account, so the type of account that service members are going to have access to in March of 2025, when you put the money in, you have to use it in the year in which it comes out. So if, this program is going to launch in March, whatever money goes in this year in 2025, you have to use by the end of the year, except for a small amount that can be carried over, around $660 that can be carried over from one year to the next. The health savings account is actually something where you can put money in pre-tax. You actually can invest it, whereas the FSA, you cannot invest the funds. They just sit there. The HSAs, you can invest the funds, so they grow, those funds grow tax-free. And then you can take them out, you can take the funds out tax-free of the health savings account. But a major difference is with the HSA, the expense doesn't have to be in the same year in which the contribution was made. So lots more flexibility with the HSA. However, in order to have access to an HSA, you have to have something called a high deductible healthcare plan, which TRICARE is not. So for the most part, service members are not going to have access to an HSA, particularly if they retire. So if you retire and you keep TRICARE, and then you switch to TRICARE for life, you will not be able to contribute to an HSA unless essentially you give up TRICARE, which I just don't think that the tax benefit of an HSA would, offset the value of TRICARE. I mean, everybody's situation is different. That's not a recommendation specific to you. But it would be a stretch to think that giving up TRICARE in favor of an HSA would be to your advantage. Again, not specific advice. Mike, did I miss anything about the comparison between FSA and HSA?
No, I think you hit it, and that's really important. That if you've got TRICARE, you don't get to participate in an HSA. You probably get that question often. I do. Once people retire, because they are very useful accounts, but really, like you said, most of the time TRICARE is better, because basically a high deductible plan means that you're paying a significant amount of money up front. You've got that first several $1,000s of expenses to participate in an HSA. So TRICARE has very low deductibles and that, so it really, like you said, probably not something you want to do unless there's some very unique circumstance around that. So
Yeah, exactly. So Mike, tell us more about the new DOD FSA plan. So just the specific details that are going to apply to this program that's rolling out in March.
sure. So like you said, March of 2025. I haven't seen a whole lot yet on it. We're recording this a little early, so hopefully by the time this comes out, there's more info that members are receiving. But it's going to be administered through the FSA Feds website, because, like I said, the civilian side has had this ability for a while. So this just allows military now to participate. It's for active duty members and reservists if they're on active duty. And you'll be able to contribute anywhere between $100 and $3,300. And then if you're joint military, married to military, you can each have an account. So you could get up to $6,600 at that point. Like we said, it's going to go live in March of 2025. And, the one important thing is you'll also use that FSA Feds website to get reimbursed for any of your expenses. So when you have an eligible expense, you'll keep that receipt. You'll have to submit that, and then you'll get reimbursed at that point. So, and then finally, like you said, you can roll over. It's basically use it or use it for the year, except you are able to roll over up to $660 per year to the next year. And that is typically indexed to inflation, so that could change over time. But for 2025, it's $660. So.
One thing I just want to jump in and add to this, use it or lose it concept is if you plan to leave service, or if you're a reservist who's been mobilized to active duty and your active duty time is going to end, your year might be cut short. So it's not something that you get to keep beyond when you're in service. So it's just important to keep in mind that if you're going to have a short year for some reason, that you might not want to use your full year of expenses to estimate what you're going to put in. You might need to cut back because your year is short.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, Amy, let's talk a little bit on the financial planning side on, is this a good deal? Who's it a good deal for? What are some things to make sure you're, thinking about before you do this? Um, so who who is this best for?
Yeah, this FSAs are good, particularly for families. So if you're a single service member, you don't have any dependents, this may not be such a great deal for you just because you're getting all your care on post or on base. When you get referred out, you're still getting basically, care at no cost. You don't have any out-of-pocket costs. You might have, if you prefer to wear contact lenses, if you have different over-the-counter things that the military doesn't cover for you, maybe, but probably they're very minimal out-of-pocket expenses. So, maybe not such a great deal for a single service member. But if you're a service member and you have maybe lots of dependents or a dependent who has a lot of medical care needs, and as a result, you've chosen to use either TRICARE Select or you're experiencing a lot of copays, in order to access the kind of care that they need, or you're paying out of pocket for the kind of care that they need. It could be a really great deal. But what should drive all of this is what you typically spend. So what is your average out-of-pocket medical expense, dental, vision expense for your family? That's generally what should sort of form the basis of your decision to participate in this program and to what extent you might participate.
Yeah, great points. Um, yeah, the other thing I'll say is, it's going to be a better deal for folks who are in higher tax brackets because, again, you're pulling that money out. It's not going to get taxed at that bracket. It's kind of like the traditional IRA where the money's going into the account before the IRS taxes it. So, if you're in the lowest tax bracket, like you said, single service member, you'll still get a benefit, but again, you probably don't want to over contribute, and because it is use it or lose it. And you hear of, the December run to CVS for people with their flexible spending account, like, oh, I've got to buy, $1,000 worth of Band-Aids and, vitamins and those type of things. So it's a good deal, but if you either lose the money or, are buying stuff that you really don't need, then it probably isn't a good deal. So, just make sure, like Amy said, you're really basing it on how much you spend yearly on these type of things, and then consider it.
Yeah, and I mean it's it, and there's not, there is an administrative cost. I'll call it an admin cost to this, right? So, you put the money in, the administrative cost is the time that it's going to take you to file reimbursement. So going back to Mike's point that if you're in a higher tax bracket, you experienced greater savings. So, two single service members, right? One is in, a higher tax bracket, one is in a lower tax bracket. You put $100 in, the person in the lower bracket, might get, let's just say, a $10 benefit. The person in the higher bracket might get a $20 benefit. The trade-off is the amount of time, because it's going to take you the same amount of time to put in that reimbursement request. So sometimes you just kind of have to think about how you want to use your time and trade off money versus time and vice versa.
Yeah, there's definitely I like to call it the return on hassle we talk about other returns. And so if you are not somebody who's going to want to deal with receipts and file those and really make sure you're taking advantage of it, then maybe it's not worth the small amount of savings that you get, like you said, and time that you have to do that. So
Right. So, I mean, we've talked about, how important it is to have a good feel for what your normal out-of-pocket expenses are for the year. Most of us probably haven't spent a lot of time tracking that. Do you have any tips for folks on how to estimate an annual out-of-pocket cost?
yeah, I mean, hopefully you're tracking your spending in some manner and can go back and find that. But I would say first start looking for your bigger expenses. So, like you said, if you have a family, what are the dental costs and the vision costs and things that could add up, maybe significantly depending on where they're getting seen, and start with that estimate, and then maybe participate at a lower level that first year, and then continue to monitor it, make sure you're using it, and you know go at that point is probably what I'd suggest to folks.
Yeah, for sure. And that makes a lot of sense, just start with the big stuff, right? Because again, going back to return on hassle, which I really like that concept. Um, if you really are only spending a little bit of money out of pocket, is it really worth your hassle to go, save yourself $10, $20, something like that? So start with the big stuff. Start with, I'll also say sometimes you can look forward and see, for example, if one or more of your children are going to be in braces, how much is going to be covered versus not covered in that case. And a lot of times it's not a lot that's going to be covered. What if you know that you're going to start wearing contact lenses? So things that that might come up, they're not normal expenses, but they're pretty likely to come up in this year. That's another thing that you should add to your estimate. Paying close attention to, if you expect it and then it doesn't happen, you still have to use or lose that money. So under contributing is probably a good idea, at least in the first year.
Yeah, I wish it would have been available when I put my daughter through braces. Would have been nice.
For sure. Now, so Mike, when you think about, how an FSA fits in somebody's overall financial plan, can you just give us some thoughts around, how it might fit and work with other strategies?
Yeah, it's really just another tool in the toolkit, another account you can use to potentially reduce taxes. And like you hit on, the nice thing is that it's pre-tax, and it comes out tax-free also. So unlike the traditional IRA where you got to worry, down the road that you're still going to have to pay taxes on it, this is just tax-free money as long as you're using it for the eligible expenses. So yeah, it's a tool. It again, I don't think the numbers we're talking about, even if you max it out $3,300 and had those expenses each year, you're saving a few $100, maybe $1,000, depending on your actual tax bracket. But so it's not something that's gonna drastically move the needle, but it's something you can do if you will use it. It's just another tool. How about you?
Agree. Completely agree. The key to this is, and I hear this a lot. You probably hear this a lot too. I'm gonna go buy this and have this tax write off, and that's like a really great thing. except for you spent money to get the tax write-off, which is less money than you spent, right? So, the idea that it's great to get the tax write-off, but still you don't want to lose the money, because whatever you've lost is definitely more than what you've gained in terms of the tax benefit. So, it's just something to pay attention to. Again, it's another tool in the toolkit. You should work hard to pay the tax that you owe and nothing more. If there's legal ways to reduce your tax bill, it's always a good idea to do that, keeping in mind that there is sort of this administrative tail. You've got to be willing to do the work to keep receipts, to file for reimbursement, keep track of where your account is, and know how things are going to unfold. And also be paying attention to kind of what your career plans are, so that you're not losing money because you have a short year. What else, Mike? What other kind of thoughts do we have for people today on the new military medical FSA?
I think we covered most of it. Just be on the lookout for information coming out from DOD and consider it. Make sure you read it carefully and fully understand it. A couple places you can go for information could be the Military One Source or DOD's Office of Financial Readiness. That's where we got a lot of this info for the podcast. So check that out. And, the DOD office is also called FinRed. If you Google that, it'll probably come up, and you can stay on top of it. So, anything else we missed, Amy?
No, I'll just point out that the FSA Fed site is a very good resource as well. So if as you're trying to estimate what your out-of-pocket costs might be, you can go to that website and you can get a list of the qualified out-of-pocket medical expenses. So the list of things that actually do qualify. So you can go through that list and you can say, that's not eligible, so cross that off my list. Or I didn't know that could possibly be eligible, and I actually have a lot of money dedicated to that. So definitely take a look at what the qualified expenses are as you prepare your estimate for your first year. Open season about March when it launches. Hopefully there'll be more information coming soon.
Great. And I think that about wraps it up. We'll be back in a couple weeks, and hope this was a useful podcast.
Awesome. It was always,
Thanks, Amy.
Always good to chat, Mike. Take
care.